Hunger moves you along the crushed stone path. In the dead of night, the smell of blood compels you forward. You trudge through the deep grass as you move through a tree-filled area. Spiky branches scrape you. Ahead of you, on a cleared pathway, an older man walks his tiny dog. Balding, with a pair of thick glasses on his nose, the man allows the dog to guide him, unaware of the danger stalking him. In a blink, you close the distance between your hiding spot and the man. Your feet don't touch the ground in a sprint, but rather, you simply materialize before him. Your first strike severs his right arm. The dog runs in terror, his leash bouncing behind him as he disappears into the nighttime distance. The old man howls, half in shock and half in pain as you tower over him, with blood spurting out of his arm's socket in rhythmic bursts. A second sweeping blow cuts out the man's legs, sending him sprawling onto the path and screaming for help. A third and final blow crushes his throat and ends his life. Darkness fills your dream until a homeless woman sits on an island in the middle of the Willamette River, near the edge of the island and protected by several trees. The vagrant sets up a tent. She's haggard with oily, long hair, a worn jacket, and tattered boots. From the edge of the water you emerge. The same hunger burns as before, the same yearning and desire to purify. Suddenly, you stand over the tent, plunge the scene into darkness, and use your shadows to reach inside for her ankles. As you drag her into the grass, her eyes are wide with terror and her mouth opens to scream. You shove your clawed hand into her gaping mouth. Her flimsy arms flail at you, fighting to survive, even as she coughs and chokes on blood filling her lungs. Flexing your fingers, you tug, removing the woman's jaw from her face. Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to my World of Darkness, where today we will be doing the 6th episode of the Thicker Than Water recap, as well as Chapter 4 and 5 of Styx Bones, which is located in the Cult of the Blood Gods supplement for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. Now, this has been a very interesting night because where, for the most part, the characters throughout the story have followed along the standard path laid out for the story, they had to have a little bit more of a push in the right directions. So I will try to make this as coherent as possible, but it did get a little crazy, so I can't exactly follow the book as a memory jog for this one. First, all of the characters stayed during the day at the Hikata Temple. They all had the same dreams. They all woke up knowing 2 more murders had occurred, and they all woke up incredibly full. No rouse checks needed for the beginning of this. They all ended up coming in with 0 hunger points on their character sheets. I would like to point out again also that the lack of hunger points due to the the murders is not in the book. That's something that I personally added in there because I wanted to have the psychic connection be a little bit more prominent, and due to the fact that there is a necromancy power called Feast of Souls where you feed psychically from wraiths, I figured I could bend the rules a little bit and throw this in there. This not only added a little bit more of a direct contact link between the players and the murders, but also it stopped us from having to do rouse checks at the beginning of the night, which I will fully admit I am awful at remembering. So, as the characters all woke up, the first thing that happens is Tinia checks her phone and sees that she missed a text message from Mason, who lets her know that the city is in a state of curfew due to the murders that are occurring, that 2 more murders were committed the night before in the early morning hours, and that the city has let loose CERT, which is the Special Emergency Reaction Team. CERT is a real institution in Portland, Oregon, and I'm using an over-dramatized version of them to represent the, what is it called? The GSG-10 organization in Munich, Germany, which effectively is the same thing. They're almost like a militarized police unit. So the characters discuss this whole situation, what's going on, and when Tinia mentions the fact that Mason had sent them the information about what was going on the mortal front, Damien had decided that he was going to contact Mason himself due to the fact that the 2 of them served in the military together before the embrace, and he believes that the bond that they share should be able to get him some more information. Unfortunately, Damien let on that he knew more about the murders than Mason had actually released. So, that being a thing, Mason demands that the coterie come to where the prince has set up a small base area outside of an Elysium. The prince himself has canceled Elysiums, has made sure that all the Kindred are staying off of the streets as much as possible for the time being until this can blow over, because they still have a theory that there may be hunters involved, or they at least don't want hunters to get involved in this. Mason does give the information that he believes that there may be connections to the Second Inquisition in CERT. So, moving on. With the information that they need to go to the Portland, Oregon Rose Gardens exhibition hall fresh in their minds, Damien and Sam decide to not go at all and head over to the Benson Hotel, where they may still have some things in the rooms they were havening in while playing bodyguards to Asano. Dawn and Tinia decide to head straight over to the exhibition hall. It's not too far away from where they are right now, and they're able to get there without much problem. As they arrive, they find Merrick, the prince, James Merrick, and Mason, his child, and also deputized Ventrue of the city, looking over map work of the city and all the different clues that they have. There are a bunch of X's all over this large map of the city, which are a location where each of the murders had taken place, including the 2 that were done the night before, which took place in Fulton, which is on the the northeast side, south of the Willamette River. It is actually in the Willamette area. One of them took place in the Willamette Park on the banks of the river, and the other one took place on Toe Island in the middle of the river itself. But these areas fall in the Fulton district of Portland. Now, with all that going on, it is explained that the prince would love to just send in some foot soldiers and pull some strings with influence to try to handle this situation himself. However, Fulton is an anarch territory, and not only is it anarch, it's anarch contested as well. There is what is known as a sofa baron who has claimed the area for himself. For those of you who do not know, a sofa baron is a vampire in the anarch community who has arranged a following, but is small enough to fit on a sofa. That's all that means, it basically just means a minor warlord in the Anarch community. Not wanting a war between the Anarchs themselves, no one has really tried to cause a problem. Fulton is not really the best part of Portland, as it is anyway. But sending Camarilla in would definitely spark a little bit of a war. So he wishes to send Anarchs in to investigate the 2 murder scenes tonight. Due to the fact that Merrick is good friends with Colin Griffin, who is a respected member of the Anarch community and Tinia's sire, he wants to get Tinia to go and investigate. However, before anything can be done, Tinia decides it's time to fess up about the dreams. Dawn is not happy about this and decides to use her abilities of perception manipulation to try to make to try to get Merrick out of the room so that she can talk to Tinia ahead of time. Unfortunately, she misspoke. She makes it so that Mason's voice can be heard echoing in the building saying, "Sire, come here." Unfortunately, Mason has never called his sire. He has always called him boss. So that happening, the prince checks his phone and sends a message to Mason asking him if he actually did call him. Mason says no. He orders him to turn the lights on. The lights come on, and he says out loud to the room, "Who is ever hiding in here, show yourselves or you can deal with the sheriff." Dawn reveals herself. He is not happy with the fact that the Anarchs have decided to try to be sneaky around him, and he decided to put this on the back burner until later because there is too much going on to deal with anything else. However, if anything like this happens again, he knows who to blame. He explains to them the whole situation about how if this is someone trying to cause the Camarilla to make war against the Hecata, that they will be breaking the promise of 1528. And that right there could spark a global war between the Camarilla and the Hecata, which is unwanted. Also, with the whole situation with the Anarchs being involved, this could spark up a war between the factions that could very well just be a risk to the Masquerade along with that. So while they're explaining the whole situation on that end, on the other side of town, Sam and Damien are arriving at the Benson Hotel, which they find completely quarantined off. There's police tape everywhere. There are very large armored militaristic vehicles, and there's no way they're getting through the front, which is completely taped off, with residents being questioned by officers. When they decide to go around the back, they find more guards not letting anything come in or out of the back. The guards there, however, are wearing night vision goggles and also holding some very, very high-tech weaponry. When they decide that they need to get the hell out of there, and also it might be a good idea to change the license plates on Damien's car because they've been driving it a lot lately, and going to all the murder sites, they decide to pull into an area off the beaten path. Now, this is where I took a little bit of creative liberties, and that is because in the book it suggests using the Olympic Park in Munich, Germany. In 1972, the Olympic Games were held in Munich, Germany, and they built this massive arena, and yeah, that does not exist in Portland. So what I went ahead and did was I said that it did, and I made it so that The Olympics were going to be held in Portland at one point in time, but they decided not to. So now there's this big area that is only used for public events such as concerts and things like that. As they pull into that area, because it's typically quiet and they would be able to change out the license plate there, they find the entire area completely surrounded by chain link fence. Military tents popped up, guards everywhere, and they go, oh, well, fuck, and leave. That's at the point where they decide that they're going to head back over to the convention hall that the prince told them to meet at. As they get there and they start talking about what they need to do, they decide that several things need to be done. First, the murder scenes need to be investigated by Kindred. No way around that. And it would be a good idea if Anarchs led the charge on that one, since they were held in Anarch territory. And we have an NPC by the name of Redclave, who was a Sabbat member in Seattle up until the point where the Sabbat dissipated and went east to fight in the Gehenna War. A small pack led by Redclave defected over to the Anarchs when that happened, and they are the ones who have claimed Fulton as their own territory. Now, with that all going on, they also need to investigate into CERT, into the Special Emergency Reaction Team, to find out what they know, if any information can be found in the murders that might be a breach to the masquerade. They need to find out exactly what they need to do to cover into that. But also, they need to question Mother Anya to find out if she knew anything, because they're starting to find gaps in the stories. The prince questions them about the involvement in ransacking Gunther Hildebrand's room in the Benson Hotel, because the Seneschal knew about it. Everybody knew that at least Tinia and Sam were inside that room, and everybody knew that Damien was attempting to be a distraction while that can get done. Explaining the whole situation about the fact that he was labeled as a hunter and everything like that, the prince had no idea anything about that, and explains to them how strange it is that they were able to simply just kill a hunter, that they were able to get into his apartment and not find any weapons, and how they may have very well been lied to by the Hecata. So, with all of that going on, Mason has been sent to go fetch Jonathan Harker. Yes, our wonderful little Ipsissimus Tremere Anarch, who may be able to help with this whole situation. Not with his knowledge of wraiths, which he is well known for, but for thaumaturgical use. Now, this is not also in this also is not in V5, and I threw it in here because it was something that I do not see a reason not to. In earlier versions, we had a ritual known as Bone of Lies, and upon explaining to Harker exactly what's going on, he is able to present to them a Bone of Lies, which he is not 100% thrilled with having to do, not just because it's to the Camarilla, but it's also a very unsavory ritual, since you need a fresh finger bone. He explains to them that they should be able to get 10 lies out of the person, and every time they lie, the bone will become darker, and then the person will be forced to say the truth. So, he wraps that up in a nice little parcel and hands that over to Tinia. The job at that point is to try to figure out who is going to be investigating what. Tinia and Sam decide that they're going to investigate CERT. So, that means trouble is going to happen. And that is because Sam doesn't talk to people. He does not tell people exactly what he has planned. And while they are driving around, Tinia asks Sam what exactly he needs, and he says a can of Pringles. Instead of telling Tinia exactly why he needed a can of Pringles, he decided to barge off and go get it himself because she wanted to know why exactly she was going to be doing that. She felt he might be wasting her time. They don't know each other very well, and they're both, well, Sam's an asshole. So, there's that. So, Tinia is left waiting in the car. While Tinia is waiting and Sam is off looking for a convenience store during a curfew, Damien and Dawn decide to go towards the area of the murders to investigate. I really think this was a bad idea because sending Damien into the Anarch territory was just wrong. Just a bad idea. They really should have sent an Anarch into this area, but they get to the banks of the Willamette River, and they're able to see Toe Island off in the distance, and they find, after a little bit of rummaging around in the bushes, they're able to find a boat to get across, just a simple rowboat. And as they get across, they find that Toe Island is crawling with Cert, and they need to investigate the area, and there's these very large lights just pointing all over the place, and everything's cordoned off. And using her talents of sensory manipulation, Dawn makes the CERT team hear a drowning woman on the far side of the island, giving Damien the ability to send his shadows in to grab the paperwork on what they have found, where they discover that it was a homeless woman that was murdered, that the Hakata clan symbol was painted, although it's just marked as an occult symbol. They are, however, starting to gather that it is related to the goddess Hecate of the Three Faces. But they find out that the Hakata symbol was painted on the side of her tent in her own blood, and that the woman's remains have been moved to the Olympic Park, where the CERT team has set up their operating base. At this point, they've decided to leave and start working their way over to Willamette Park, where the first murder occurred. Unfortunately, on their way, they realize that they become surrounded by a group of 6 bikers. Redclave and his pack. This pseudo-anarch Sabbat pack has decided that they're going to shake this unknown individual down. They are patrolling the streets and trying to make sure that nothing else happens in the area, because it does just brings unwanted attention regardless of what your loyalties are. When Damien decides to not pull over, and I would like to also point out that yet again Dawn is an obfuscate in the car. Redclave pulls out his very large reaping scythe while he's riding his motorcycle and pops the front driver's tire of Damien's armored car. Now, this is again Damien's personal vehicle. So as he's realizing that he's not going to outrun these anarchs on their motorcycles, he allows them to direct his car into an alleyway. And this is where things get really bad, and we get our first real sense of impending doom in this whole situation. As Redclave bends over and knocks on the windshield with his jagged talons and tells Damien to get out of the car. Damien opens the door and starts to slip out as Dawn slips out behind him. Dawn weasels her way out of the car itself too and gets to the other side of the gang at this point, who have pretty much just surrounded the car. There's 3 towards the back and 3 towards the front. Redclave being one of the 3 towards the front, right up on the driver's side. And as he starts to say, "What are you doing in my city?" Dawn uses Silence of Death. And when Dawn uses Silence of Death, the thought Assamite pops into the mind of Redclave, because my first thought on this Obfuscate power is that it's primarily used by the Banu Hakim. I understand that anyone with Obfuscate can grab it, but it's still, after all the years that I've played, still, it just resonates Banu Hakim to me. And when there is a Banu Hakim, which have now sided with the Camarilla, when there is a Banu Hakim in your city, the first thing that you should probably do is kill it before it kills you. And he swipes at Damien, thinking he is the Banu Hakim, believing that he is the Assamite, swipes at his stomach, and his innards become his outards. Striking the first blood. A fight ensues. Dawn tries to spark a little bit of fear in the vampires attacking, and uses her powers to make them all believe that they see fire starting on the front of the car. Damien shoves a knife into the shoulder of Redclave, which is dosed in a Kindred lethal poison, only confirming his thought process that this is a member of the Banu Hakim. And as he realizes that he needs to reconsider his attacking tactics, he dissolves into a mist, and Damien falls to the concrete, just as one of the other Anarchs, and I say that Anarchs very sarcastically, steps forward. As he goes to fire, Damien unloads a clip from his own gun into the boy's face. The ghoul falls to the ground, dead. The fire that has now been erupted on the front of the car frightens two of the other members off out of Rorschach, and Dawn has made her way behind one of the vampires attacking, grappling and sinking her fangs into it and beginning to drain. As this is happening, Damien stands up, trying not to spill himself out onto the asphalt, as another swipe comes at him as the last member of the group starts to loom over him, becoming larger and taller, and his arms becoming unnaturally long, increasing their length. The fight just went on. The fight went on for quite some time, parrying, dodging, trying not to be caught, swiping a poison blade at it. Eventually, as Dawn is holding the crumbling ashes of the vampire that she's just diablerized into her arms as it crumbles to dust, she looks up and sees the horrid form as it's picking up Damien and shoving him in his mouth, just in time for Damien's blade to sink into the neck of the horrid form. The monster flings Damien into some trash cans on the side as Dawn tries to get around the front of the car, trying to get to any of Damien's weapons. She then creates another burst of fire in front of the horrid form, where he backs off a bit, and Damien has just enough time to crawl along the dirty alley pavement to reach up to his trunk to get some of the heavier ammunition that's inside, when he realizes he can't open it. And Dawn and Damien realize at the exact same time that Redclave has reformed, holding his scythe on the trunk of the car, staring down at Damien with a maniacal grin on his face. At this point in time, Dawn has realized that it's time to go, that there's nothing else that she can do for Damien, and she runs. The horrid form starts to shrink back down to its regular vampire self, and the silence of death fades as Dawn leaves the area. Redclave looks down at Damien and says, I'm impressed. How much cash you got on you? Damien pulls out what little money he has, and Redclave takes it, shoves it in his pocket, and says, I'm going to let you go on one condition. And he goes over and starts ripping open trash bags until he finds an old vegetable can, slits his wrist and pours it into the can and says, drink. Damien doesn't handle the blood bond well. Well, that's not so true. Damien handles the blood bond too well. He reluctantly drinks. Redclave looks at him and says, see you around, kid. And the two aggressors leave him there, standing near his broken car, amongst the fire, by himself, as they walk off laughing into the night. Damien, realizing that he can't do anything with his car at this point in time, because not only is it on fire, but there's also a shredded front tire, decides that destruction of the evidence is probably the best case. I disagree, but Damien does it anyway, and opens up his trunk, pulls the pin on a couple of grenades, and walks away, because cool guys don't look at explosions. After abandoning the young Lasombra, Dawn made her way down the road a couple of blocks to a busted out old abandoned gas station, where she realizes that she has her phone and calls Tinia to let her know what happened. Tinia, still waiting on Sam to get back, decides, fuck it, and leaves him. Starts up the car and starts heading into Fulton. She's able to make her way exactly where she needs to go, following the sirens of all of the police cars, ambulances, and fire trucks that have come to handle the destruction from the exploding car in the alleyway. Given Dawn's description, she's able to find her very easily, and they're actually able to find Damien fairly easily too, because he slipped into the first abandoned building he could find, trying to hold himself together. They carry him to the car and decide to head over to the Last Drop bar, the local Anarch watering hole. When they get there, they explain to Colin Griffin what the fuck is actually happening, and he decides that he's going to have to handle this. So after getting a staple gun and fixing Damien up as best as he can, and giving him some blood from a cooler that he happened to have, he decides to head over into Fulton and try to smooth things over with Redclave, just as Sam is making his way to the Last Drop with information, because Damien had called him and decided that after everything that's been going on right now, he himself needs to work on possibly getting an alternate identity and getting the fuck out of town. Now, after Sam was able to get a hold of his Pringles can, he was able to use it to make an amplifier to get better reception, to break into the network of CERT. Going to a coffee house and using their Wi-Fi not too far from where the Olympic Park itself was. Busting into the network of CERT, he was able to find out that all of the bodies from all of the murders had been moved to that base area for study. That the two newest victims, one being a 60-year-old Leon Hummel, who is a retired school teacher. He had his right arm severed by some sharp weapon with an elliptical edge. His leg suffered superficial wounds from a similar weapon and had a crushed throat. Like the first murder, photographs of his site reveal that his detached arm was used to paint a picture of the Hecata symbol on the sidewalk, though CERT is calling it an occult symbol at this point. Leon Hummel is a widower, and he lives in the area, and he's lived in this area for about 20 years. He has one adult daughter named Helena Hummel, who is currently attending college out of state. They were also able to identify the Jane Doe who was killed on Toe Island. Her name is Martina Rittberger. She's a 40-year-old who died shortly after having her jaw torn out, causing her to asphyxiate on her own blood. Her body also accompanied a Hecata symbol drawn in blood on her tent. Her history shows that a long history of mental illness. Untreated, she slid through the cracks and ended up homeless on the street by 2016. With all of this information, they still realized that they were in square one. They couldn't really find much of anything that anybody was connected to, except for the fact that maybe the college could be involved in this, but maybe also that we're looking for someone who was connected to Hildebrandt in some fashion. They were just very, very confused by the entire thing. But they have decided that the last thing that needs to be done is they need to catch Mother Anya in a lie, because her information that she's given them has not quite matched the information that they got from Mora the Deathseer. So everybody piles into Tinia's car, and on their way back to the Hecata Temple, they're T-boned by another car into a streetlight, completely taking their car out. As the Dazed Kindred are starting to come through from the accident, they look out the window and they see Asano and 4 of his retainers pop out of the car with guns pointing at them. Asano is completely a shadow of his former self. He's gaunt, he's ragged, he's half mad with grief. The left arms of Asano and his retainers all have a black armband with a symbol on it. The characters realize very quickly that it's the same symbol that was on that tie pin in Gunther Hildebrandt's box that they found inside of his safe. They had unwittingly been set up to murder his touchstone. And at that point, it takes a fair bit of talking on Tinia's part to be able to explain that they were set up, that they did not mean to do this. And after being able to talk Asano down, they explain to him that they're on their way to confront Mother Anya about the entire situation, and he offers to give them a ride. He also apologizes. He's been the one harassing and attacking their touchstones, figuring an eye for an eye. But he also apologizes because he does not blame the tool for the action. He does not consider them the murderers. As they get to the temple, they find the portion of the chain link fence that's in the front knocked over, as if somebody had run into it with a car. They find one of the large wooden doors has been ripped from the hinges and thrown to the side. Mother Anya standing outside looking shocked. As Asano and the coterie confront her on what's going on, they pull out the Bone of Lies. She answers all the questions truthfully. She did not know. She did not lie to them. She gave them all of the information that she had, but as much as she is appalled by the situation that's going on and shocked that the coterie are with Asano, who seems to be in a complete wreck of himself, she's intrigued by the Bone of Lies that they're using on her. They rush to Mora's sanctum. They find out very quickly that the file given to them by Mora in Chapter 1, pinpointing Gunther Hildebrandt as the target, was specifically chosen as an assault on Asano Hiramitsu. Their hatred not quite as put to the side as they thought. This is Chapter 5, Rise and Fall. They find much in the Deathseer's bedroom. Normally a Spartan room, it's scattered with clothes and papers and belongings. Most are benign, but several pages lie on the floor, and they include maps of Portland, marked with bold red circles. They total 5, including the 4 most recent attacks. They also include the 5th location at St. James Lutheran Church in St. James, Portland, Oregon. The 5 together form an X through the city. Further investigation of Mora's notes revealed that the attacks were not targeting the victims, but rather their locations. By creating an ever-expanding pattern of crosses, the Deathseer hoped to create what they refer to in their notes as an Oblivion Circle. By painting key locations in blood, the Deathseer might be able to use their particular Oblivion gifts on a city-wide scale. Her notes theorize the ability to shroud Portland in darkness. Another page asserts an exhaustive ceremony would allow the Hecata not only to perceive everything occurring within Portland, but to travel instantaneously within the city via shadow step. At this point, the characters realize there's only one thing to do. They need to get to St. James Church quickly. The murders happen between 3 and 4 in the morning, and it's already 3 o'clock now. They hop in their car and they race as fast as they can. Asano's men phone in a disturbance on the other side of town claiming gunfire, and as they drive the streets, they pass a very large CERT group rushing off in the direction of the false report. They race over the St. James Bridge into the area, and they park, and they wait. They see a homeless person sleeping on the steps of the church. And just as they see the body of Gunther Hildebrandt, half crazed with talons extended and shadows melting from its body, just as those shadows begin to reach up the steps towards the sleeping homeless person, Tinia invokes all the powers of her celerity, rushes, grabs the person, and throws them in the bushes as Asano's men open fire. Dawn stays back, not knowing exactly what to do because she had been warned if you touch this thing, they could have a necrotic touch that could very well damage you. Damien unleashes hell on this cause of all of his personal pain over the last few days. Truly ruthless, like Alessandra. And Sam, using Soaring Leap, flies through the air, lands on Constancia, and sinks his fangs into its throat. Asano holds its arms down as they begin to completely ravage this creature, and as it becomes weaker and weaker, Asano screams that he wants the body. The prince also needs evidence that this is handled so that he can clear the name of the coterie. And as Constancia passes, and the fresh body of Gunther Hildebrandt tumbles to the ground, they load him up into the trunk and drive back to the exhibition hall at the Rose Gardens. Presenting the body to the prince, Asano apologizes for everything that he may be involved in when it comes to this. He's sorry that his personal blood feud bled over into a Camarilla city, and that was never his intention. The papers in Gunther Hildebrandt's safe were revealed to be information involving the transportation influences of the city. Asano's personal pet project. Accepting the fact that this is over, the prince does allow Asano to take the body. The Kindred accept the fact that the coterie is innocent, and all becomes quiet for a time. Death is certain. Life is not. That cemetery in Portland where the lovers were killed. It holds many graves and now prepares to house one more. A light rain falls in the dark, overcast sky as mourners gather. Candlelight flickers across Asano's face as he stands over the open grave of Gunther Hildebrandt. The coterie have all been invited to this ceremony. Mother Anya's expression is solemn and thoughtful as the body resides beside his parents and grandfather, Alexander Hildebrandt. Mora is not in view. Your grandfather was my dearest friend, Asano says to the departed. He showed me a great kindness in the world that had little. He cared for me, and I cared for him. After he died, I honored his memory by protecting his children and his children's children. By protecting you. His voice cracks full of emotion, and Asano clears his throat. By protecting you, I failed, but will atone my sins and renew my vow to your sister, Laura. For out of this tragedy, some good will come. It must. I dedicate my unlife to preserving hers, and in so doing, your memory, and of my dearest friend Alexander. Mother Anya steps forward to speak. I am the end and the beginning. Dead flesh may cover my bones, and my bones may encase an unbeating heart. Yet I remain. Ghosts may follow me in my wake, and in my wake may other ghosts soon join them, to bear witness, to honor their memory, to live beyond them, for death is certain, life is not. For I am Hecata. I am the beginning and the end. I remain. I remain. I remain. The mourners all respond, we remain. At the conclusion of the funeral, the gathered depart, wandering their way back towards their cars. The forested ceremony is softly silent. With an end to the murders, the prince's stranglehold on the Hecata is loosened. With the risen destroyed, the kindred return to their nightly agendas. But as the coterie reaches their vehicles, Mother Anya steps forward and lets them know that, just before the ceremony, this letter arrived. Family, I trust you receive this letter in the spirit it is written. For I am Hecata, and bear no ill will towards my family. I did deceive Asano, and I did use his dear Hildebrandt for my own ends, but my actions were in furtherance of the clan. Constantia almost succeeded in completing her ceremony. While this proves somewhat disappointing, it does invite further study. For if we, Hecata, have the means of monitoring an entire city or traveling across Portland via the shadows in the merest blink of an eye, then we have the means of redefining our destiny. We may yet emerge from the ashes of our past and reclaim our place in the jihad. We may yet escape from underneath the foot of the Camarilla and define for ourselves exactly who and what we are. The destiny I strive to create, I do not apologize for seeking. The destiny I strive to create. I do not apologize for seeking to better my family, though I regret this inconvenience so many in the interim. I depart to continue my great work. Should our paths cross again, I will embrace you as my blood, and pray you understand the full depth of my actions. Until then, I bid you a good night, for we are the end and the beginning, and we yet remain from now and for all time. Sincerely, Mora. This was a very interesting, heartfelt story. The players were all emotionally charged. It affected all the characters evenly. I enjoyed running this, and I do believe that once I get to read the story that comes with the continuation of Cult of the Blood Gods, the next supplement, which is meant to have a continuation of the story, we most likely will run that as well. Thicker Than Waters recaps will continue to come, because we will continue to play every week. I would like to thank my players, the cast of Thicker Than Water, for being so amazing in all of this, and for working together in such an amazing way. Even when your characters didn't quite get along, you made the story possible. Storytelling for me is my way of feeling fulfillment, and I hope that those of you listening to this get at least a fraction of what I get from telling it. I am Voivode Maquette. This was my World of Darkness. Good evening.
Thank you.